How did that happen?
Oh, they just leave me there. I don't know why.
The traps, the smile. And for a while, Macaulay Culkin didn't just look like the most famous kid in America. He looked like he was having the greatest childhood imaginable. But years later, people started looking back at those old interviews differently. Because behind the jokes, behind the fame, behind the movie premieres, Macaulay Culkin sometimes looked exhausted in ways people didn't really notice at the time. And honestly, that's what makes his story feel uncomfortable now. Because most people remember the success. Almost nobody talks about what that level of fame probably feels like when you're still a child. Especially when the entire world suddenly starts treating you less like a kid and more like a business. By 1994, Macaulay Culkin was reportedly making millions of dollars per movie. Still a teenager, still growing up, still trying to figure out who he even was. And then, almost as quickly as he became the biggest child star in Hollywood, he disappeared. No huge transition into adult fame. No smooth Hollywood evolution. Just gone. Then years later, new photos of Macaulay started spreading online for completely different reasons. People thought he looked unhealthy, too thin, too tired, and suddenly, the internet started asking a question that felt much darker than simple celebrity gossip. What actually happens to a child after becoming world famous too early? At first, the fame looked harmless. Home Alone became a massive hit almost overnight. And suddenly, Macaulay Culkin wasn't just a movie star. He was everywhere. Commercials, posters, talk shows, magazine covers. And when you rewatch those interviews now, something feels strange about them. Not obvious, just strange. Because adults around him often talked about money, contracts, schedules, and success, while Macaulay himself still sounded like a normal kid. That contrast feels way more uncomfortable watching it years later. And maybe people didn't notice it at the time because the movies were so successful. Everything looked exciting publicly. But behind the scenes, the pressure reportedly kept growing. More movies, more expectations, less privacy. And according to later reports, family tensions around money were also becoming increasingly serious. But publicly, none of that was really visible yet, at least not clearly. Then something happened that confused Hollywood completely. Macaulay Culkin walked away, not after failing, not after disappearing slowly, right in the middle of massive fame. And honestly, that almost never happens, especially for child stars making that much money. Which is why years later, people started wondering what Hollywood probably felt like privately for him during those years. Because by the mid-1990s, Macaulay already seemed emotionally tired of fame. And when former child stars talk about Hollywood later in life, they almost always describe the same thing. You stop feeling normal. People stop treating you normally. And eventually, you stop knowing who actually cares about you. That probably messes with a kid more than people realize. Then came the internet years. And suddenly, old photos of Macaulay Culkin started going viral again. But not because people missed Home Alone. Because people thought he looked unhealthy. Rumors exploded instantly. Addiction rumors, breakdown rumors, collapse rumors. And what's strange looking back is how quickly the public turned someone's personal struggles into entertainment again. Almost the exact same pattern people later noticed with Britney Spears. And honestly, that says something uncomfortable about celebrity culture itself. People love watching fame, but they're often even more fascinated watching fame fall apart. Years later, Macaulay Culkin slowly started speaking more openly about childhood fame and Hollywood pressure. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just honestly. And somehow, that almost made the story sadder. Because he didn't sound angry. He sounded like someone who grew up inside something unnatural for too long. And maybe that's the part most people never think about with child celebrities. Most people become famous after becoming adults. Macaulay Culkin became famous before fully becoming himself. So while millions of people felt connected to him, he was still trying to figure out who he actually was privately,
the supportive
while cameras followed everything.
Never had
the strange thing is,
there's a word
Macaulay
that I
Culkin
use in my-
surviving Hollywood at all might actually be the unusual part. Because once you start looking
Man, I'm
into
proud of my
former
kids.
child
I'm proud of
stars,
myself.
the pattern
that
becomes
that
hard
could-
to ignore. Pressure, isolation, addiction, trust issues,
World.
identity
Can't let a
problems.
year go by
And suddenly,
without watching
Home
and loving
Alone
a
stops
what's
feeling
called
like
a
just a comedy
superstar?
people grew up with.
Moneymaker?
It starts feeling like the beginning of something much more complicated, especially when you realize the audience only saw the fun part. They never saw what fame may have been slowly doing underneath it all. Today, Macaulay Culkin seems far more private and stable than during the chaos years. But his story still sticks with people for one reason. Because deep down, most people are starting to realize childhood fame probably isn't nearly as glamorous as it looked in the 1990s. And once you notice that, it becomes really hard to watch old child star interviews the same way ever again.